Welcome to Star Citizen and the ship guide preview of the MISC Hull-C. With the MISC Hull-C, we get from Alpha 3.20 the first dedicated freighter in Star Citizen, which impresses not only with its enormous size, but also with the detailed mechanics of the retractable cargo unit. Here, the announcement of the original concept for the Hull-C already lies a good 10 years back and was at the time a stretch goal of the original financing campaign at $34 million. In addition to versions used by the UEE for military purposes, smuggler versions with a specialized sensor and shielding technology were also mentioned, but we haven't heard anything about them recently. It also remains to be seen whether the Hull-C as a heavy freighter will exceed the length of 125 meters and the width and height of 55 meters when it is released. The range of this long-range freighter is in any case at least in the range of a Crusader Starlifter, since the Hull-C also has comparable fuel capacities. In the large size, we also use corresponding large components, so we remain below the capital class, which is used for example by the following Hull-D. An absolute milestone is the 4,608 SCU cargo capacity, which is located on the outside of the cargo lattice and can accommodate all container sizes from 1 to 32 SCU cargo units. With 2 to 4 crew members, we get some multi-crew options with various amenities available. Alternatively, however, solo flight is possible. However, it may be worthwhile not to leave the remote tractor beams or the 2 remote turrets unmanned. The Hull-C will be released with Alpha 3.20, whereby the current standalone price of $350 will, as expected, increase somewhat upon release. Subsequently, the Hull-C will only be available at special sales, with in-game availability later expected to be between 15 to 30 million Alpha UEC. Another innovation is the cargo mechanics required for this, which makes loading and unloading in space necessary, as the Hull-C cannot land in space stations or on planets or moons when loaded. However, docking is possible. This is because the Hull-C was basically designed for inter-system trade and is intended to transport bulk cargo over long distances and throughout several systems. However, since these systems are not yet available, the effects on the trading system, which initially only takes place in the Stanton system, cannot yet be assessed. Furthermore, the variety of goods at the stations is limited, in contrast to planets and moons. Because of this, the full functionality of the Hull-C can only be expected with future game versions and other systems. However, with the various Lagrange stations, the respective space stations of the main planets, and Grimhex, several starting points for trade interaction are already available in version 3.20, which can be used for a trading system. The goods to be transported are placed on the outside of the 8 different loading arms and anchored there. For this purpose, the spindle section, which is on the inside when retracted, is extended, almost doubling the dimensions of the ship and making the cargo grid accessible. At space stations, loading for this takes place automatically, whereby the Hull-C can also make use of the 4 remote-controlled tractor beams. These are mounted above and below, each at the bow and stern, in order to be able to reach every area of the cargo grid on all 8 loading arms. This means that it is also possible to pick up loose cargo in space or delivered cargo. Conceivable uses include cargo delivery by other ships or industrial areas such as refining, mining and salvaging, or even the recovery of abandoned cargo. The armament of the Hull-C is limited to self-defense, whereby the pilot can fall back on 2 Side 3 gimbal Panther laser repeaters. In addition, the crew can fall back on 1 Size 3 and 1 Size 2 turret in the upper area, leaving the underside and the stern completely defenseless. But the purpose of this mass freighter is not combat either, which is more likely rather the escape due to its huge dimensions and expected inertia. One of the most exciting features is the extendable cargo lattice, with an accessible gangway in the central spindle section, which is also extended. This allows us to reach the aft section of the ship even when it is extended, where we find the engine deck. In order to dock at space stations or other floating areas like Horizon, the Hull-C also has a docking functionality, which allows us to dock even when loaded, since a landing in hangar or on the surface is not possible when loaded. However, we are vulnerable to attack or pilot errors from other players due to the external cargo and when docked. To buy and sell goods, we must first go to a trading console on the station and make the purchase or sale there. We are then assigned a loading place in space, which we must take with our extended cargo grid and then wait for the loading and unloading process. We find our own cargo communication channel for this, which then assigns us a corresponding and free space, analogous to a takeoff or landing clearance. Once the requirements have been met and we have arrived in the area, the automated loading and unloading process takes place, whereby depending on the amount of cargo, a loading time is specified by means of a timer, during which we cannot move. And due to the cargo mechanics of the Hull-C, trading on planets or moons is therefore impossible, as we can only land on large landing pads or in hangar without an extending cargo grid. Thus, we also have no access to the goods available there, which significantly limits the variety of tradable goods for mass freighters. However, the available quantities on planets and moons are not designed for such cargo quantities anyway. But of course, a landing without an active cargo grid is possible as usual, for example to refuel or carry out repairs. The interior of the Hull-C extends over a total of 3 different decks, where we find a wealth of amenities and facilities. In addition to a spacious cockpit with 3 stations, the docking area with stowage space, various escape pods, there is also a spacious lounge area with kitchen and sleeping quarters for the crew. At the rear of the ship is the main engine room with the components and systems accessible from the inside, which we can reach via the optionally extendable catwalk. We also get a dedicated station for controlling our cargo with access to the 4 remotely controllable tractor beams to access our cargo outside stations. The design is typically MISC, very crisp and clean. We find many metallic and reflective surfaces, clear lettering and the necessary comfort, which also seems necessary for extended transport missions. The ship offers more than enough space for up to 4 crew members who, especially when extended, can sometimes be more than 100 meters apart. The functional scope of the Hull-C, however, is entirely limited to cargo and long-distance trade, after the offensive and defensive qualities are not worth mentioning. External cargo is vulnerable and requires anchoring to the cargo grid, which does not allow loose transport of goods. Transporting vehicles is also not really possible either, which also significantly limits other uses. Additional relevant gameplay outside of cargo transport can therefore only be expected with the implementation of the engineering mechanics. Until then, the Hull-C is by far the current maximum in cargo capacity, with the preparations for further systems and inter-system trade thus being in place. In conclusion, we can recommend the Hull-C as the first mass freighter to any ambitious trader, now that it opens the door to long-distance trade. But the subsequent sister models Hull-D and Hull-E offers an identical range of functions, but here significantly higher cargo capacities and greatly extended ranges, which should be considered. And in addition, adapted versions such as a military variant analogous to the Starfarer Gemini, which is also manufactured by MISC, are conceivable. But what is your opinion about this first mass freighter and the adapted trading system? Let us know in the comments of the video, in our Discord, or join us in the daily Twitch livestreams. At least, I'm happy that one of the originally announced chips from the extensive backlog is finally appearing in the verse after a good 10 years, with the Hull-C hopefully not remaining the only largest ship here for a long time. And with the release, you will of course get a detailed chip guide here in the channel, which will give you all details, purposes, possibilities, and of course, a comprehensive conclusion. I say goodbye until next time. See you soon, and of course, see you in the verse.